Hello students, we are doing the chapter on respiration, and today let us do or study about frog lungs. So frogs are amphibians. In one part of their life cycle, that is when they are tadpoles, they will breathe with gills, but when they are adults, they will use their skin, they will use their lungs, and they will also use their buccal cavity in order to exchange gases. So as regards the lungs of the frog, let us note down some differences between the lungs of the frog and say the lungs of a human being. First of all, the frog has no neck, and therefore the frog has no trachea. The frog has no diaphragm, so those muscles of the diaphragm are absent. These two are important differences, and therefore the frog lungs cannot be ventilated in the same way like, say for instance, a reptilian pair of lungs or a mammalian pair of lungs or a bird pair of lungs. It gulps air and takes them inside the lungs. And it is not a frequent breather, it is an intermittent breather. Intermittent breather. And it uses the lungs often to keep afloat. If it is inside water, it uses it to to make the lungs bigger and keep it afloat. So it helps it in remaining buoyant in water. Because it also uses the skin for its respiration, and it also uses the buccal cavity for its respiration. So the lungs are not really used much for respiration, it is more used for keeping it buoyant in water. There are no alveoli, as we know what alveoli are with reference to mammals. So these are some important differences with respect to frog. Let's try to draw a diagram and see what differences are these. So you can see over here that there is no trachea. This is the laryngo tracheal chamber. It is just called like that, as a laryngeotracheal chamber. This is the glottis. And these are the lungs. The lungs will be covered by another membrane, the pleural membrane. So we are just showing it with a double line. The lungs will be pinkish, and they will be, of course, they will be spongy. But you see, there is no trachea here, and of course, because there is no trachea, there is no bronchus as well, or bronchi. So this one just becomes a kind of a bag or a pouch. So these lungs are just outpocketings of buccal cavity. These are spongy. Okay, so this part is the glottis. This is the laryngotracheal chamber. That means where the mouth opens, that entire chamber, and this is the glottis. And in these lungs, they are just divided in some cases into transverse pouches like this. So this is as though we are taking a section. So on one side I am showing this, and on the other side it is the complete view. This part is the sectional part. That means the lung is internally just divided into sacs like that. These are just sacs. Internally they are divided into sacs, and these are the transverse sacs. That means therefore these parts are transverse septa. These are just transverse septa, and there is an internal tube which divides into septa. So remember that there is no alveoli, and therefore its capacity to ventilate is not very high. Okay, during the course of evolution, these are the first tetrapods, or the first terrestrial tetrapods, means those which have 4 legs. These are the first terrestrial tetrapods, and therefore their lungs are not as efficient as there are comparatively in, say, mammals. But when we use the word as efficient, we should realize that frogs are cold-blooded, okay, or poikilotherms. Their requirement of oxygen is not very high. They either estivate or burrow inside the soil for a long time, and when they emerge out, they use skin as their mode of respiration, also buccal cavity as their mode of respiration. And as we have said here, they often gulp air. They don't breathe air as we do, because they don't have a diaphragm which helps this internal ventilation. So let's draw a lateral diagram. So only let's draw this. Assume that this is the frog anterior part, that is the mouth, etc. This is the frog's buccal cavity. So this buccal cavity can be often become bigger. So I am showing this in dotted lines. So this is the frog buccal cavity. These are the lungs. This place will be the glottis. So here at this lower end there are lots of muscles. The muscles come from the hyoid apparatus, and this can go down and this can go up. So that is why I have shown these dotted lines. This is the mouth, and here there is a connection external nares. Okay, those are the external nares. Now when the frog breathes, that is, it takes in air through the mouth, and at that time this glottis is closed. At that time the glottis is closed. It tries to take in more air, and this part will be lowered down, and therefore air gets filled up over it. So at that time this buccal cavity will be quite enlarged and deep over here. Okay, so the air enters inside. Air enters inside, and it is kept here for some time. Air into buccal cavity. When the air enters into the buccal cavity, the nares are closed and the glottis is closed. When this buccal cavity is full, at that time now these muscles over here, they will raise the floor of the pharynx. Pharynx muscles raised because they get contracted, and when they get raised, at that time the glottis is opened up. Glottis opens up. Now two things happen at the same time. Because of elastic recoil of lungs, whatever air there is in the lungs will directly go out without mixing with this air. Because of elastic recoil of the lungs, the air from lungs expelled out without meeting with this air, and at the same time this part now pushes up, and therefore air from buccal cavity enters lungs. Okay, so I will just repeat this once again. This is the mouth and this is the buccal cavity, which can be lowered and it can become much bigger. So therefore I have shown this with dotted lines in this way. This is the glottis, which can be regulated, and this will lead into the lungs. So it may gulp air, and it may not be able to fill up this whole buccal cavity completely. So it goes on becoming bigger and bigger. And just at that time, so how does it become bigger? Because the muscles of the pharynx are contracting and they are getting opened up. So it will create pressure and the air comes inside. It gulps the air, it holds it over there. Now when the glottis opens, at that time, because of elastic recoil of the lungs, all the air in this rushes out directly. And just after that, these muscles contract and they push this air over here, because at that time the nares also are closed, the mouth is also closed, so the air enters inside. This is the simple way in which the air moves in and out. So as we said over here, that it gulps air and it is used more for remaining buoyant in water. and because it is also using the skin for its respiration, so the lungs are not as efficient as compared to other groups. So I hope that we have understood this part of lungs in frog. So with that, this is Professor Ravindranath signing off. Thank you.